here we go. We're down to cutting our pipes. Now earlier I mentioned that we needed a 9.5 inch piece and a 7.5 inch piece. I've already gone ahead and cut those. Along with those, I've cut some splice fittings for everywhere where I'm going to have fitting to fitting. These just allow me to put these guys together and not have a lot of space in between them. They're about 2 inches each. Now I need to cut 2 more of those. And I've got them laid out here. Now you notice for those I've got some big black marks. That's because I'm not all that worried. 2 inches, cool, it's 2 inches. When it comes down to it, I'm going to have 2 more cuts for some feet. Those are going to be a little bit more, I've got to get those closer together, make sure they're perfect. So I'm going to use some finer lines and make sure I cut those a little bit more carefully. But right now, for just the splice pieces, I'm going to go ahead and cut 2 more of those. Actually, I'm going to cut 3 more of those because I've got a special one too. So, here we go. I'm using my miter box and my miter saw, just like before. And I'm using my Workmate because it holds my miter box nice and firmly. And there's splice number 2. Now my third one's special because it's got a notch in it, and that notch is going to go in where the clamp is, because the clamp, if you look up inside the collar, it's got that rivet sticking down from the clasp. So I notched it out to accommodate that rivet. That'll shove straight in there, hold it nice and tight. But right now this piece is a little bit too long, so I'm going to trim it down. There, I got my 3 splices. One of them dedicated, so I don't want to make sure it gets to the right place right off. Now I'm going to cut my 2 legs. Now when I measured them from the opposite side. They're 4.5 and 4.5. So I'm just going to take real careful cuts on these. There's 2, and they are close enough to being perfect that I'm not going to notice any difference on them. Okay, so our pieces are all cut out. Now all we have to do is glue them all together. Then we'll fasten them down to a stabilizer board, and we'll be ready to work. So hang on, and I'll be back with some glue. Here's all our pieces that we need to glue up. And what I have here is some purple primer for the PVC pipes and PVC glue. Now you notice I'm wearing some nitrile gloves. When you get PVC glue on your hands, it can burn a little bit. It can leave, first degree burns on your hands. Plus, I've got a few open nicks on my hands from everything else I do. So I decided to wear some gloves, and it's not a bad idea. So, first thing I'm going to do is open up my purple primer and start getting the things in order here. Now when you're doing PVC, you make sure it's clean. You prime inside and out. Now the pieces I'm starting with don't require precise alignment right off the bat. So that's why I'm starting the way I'm starting. When it's time for precise alignment, that one's already in. Then I'm going to want to make sure that I'm doing things in a very precise order. It's funny, I haven't had to use all this glue and stuff since I had a hot tub, which is another long story. Didn't realize hot tubs were a lot like boats. Happiest days is when you get them and when you get rid of them. And what you're going to find is it doesn't take very long for this PVC glue to dry. Everything sets up real fast. And that's why we make sure that when we have a piece that has to align a certain way, we need to get it into that position as quick as possible. Okay, that one is firm. That was already in place. Now, these two pieces, this is the base of the long arm with the joiner for the 45-degree foot stand. And we have to make sure that they are perpendicular with each other. Like that. That kerthump you just heard in the background was my back door shutting. Okay, and when you glue it, you don't get a second chance, so you got to make sure you get it straight on the first try. And that looks pretty darn good right there. Now I'm going to put on the top extension portion. And once again, this is going to be a pretty precise alignment because I need the 45-degree curve coming straight off the back end. There we go. We're starting to take shape. Now for the bottom portion. Need to move some things out of my way. Trying to do all this and stay on camera all at the same time here. Now this T has got to be parallel with this T. And it looks like I'm pretty darn close right there. Now I'm going to dry fit these pieces. Because the idea is to get the angle set so this is at a 90-degree angle. And that's pretty darn close right there. So I want to mark these. And make sure they go in along their marks. And that is beautiful, I'm telling you. There we go. Our work stand is done. Now all I have to do is put a base plate on it. Now, the original design for this was that it would be mounted to a workbench. Just like this. And you would hard mount it down to the workbench. I don't have that much workbench room, so I want to make sure that I can use it with my workmate. So I'm going to put a plywood base on it. And I'll get to that next, and we'll mount a bicycle in here. Stand by. Well, here's our completed work stand. I've attached the PVC pipes to a piece of melamine. Now, I've thrown a little bit of black spray paint on it here and there so it shows up a little bit better on the camera. Because it's all white, it tends to bleed into one another. So I put it on a piece of melamine that just fits perfectly. The melamine is left over from our saw table project, so this was made from all scraps. It's attached to the melamine via 2 pieces of plumber's tape. Now, you could also use conduit clamp. However, I didn't have any conduit clamp in the shop, so I went ahead with plumber's tape. It's nice and sturdy. It's not going to go anywhere, and it's going to hold even the heaviest huffy that you can put on it. Now, holding it down on the workmate, I've worked a couple of things here. One, I made a cleat for the bottom that would clamp in the jaws of the workmate with a lock underneath that would go under the jaws. So when you put weight on it, it wouldn't be able to rock out because there's only so tight you can get the jaws. So this was just a little extra added measure. Or, I found works just as well. It's just using a couple of bar clamps. You just clamp them down on the back. And once again, this guy's not going to go anywhere. Something I should mention is, just for stability's sake and to make it a little bit easier to mount the plumber's tape, I also put a screw at an angle on either side of the inside the bottom pipe here. And that just held it down to the melamine while I got the plumber's tape on it. I wouldn't want to depend on those 2 internal screws because they'd just probably tear out of the plastic. I didn't want that to happen. Now, here I am. I've got a finished work stand. Now, I'm sure there's somebody out there saying, "Psh, big deal. I've worked on bikes all the time, upside down on their handlebars." Well, that's okay. I'm not wild about doing that sort of thing. It's awfully hard to work on gears and cantilever brakes or V-brakes or even disc brakes like that. So I could either be working all bent over, or I can take my bicycle and clamp it right into the stand and work at chest level. And if I want to work on the cranks, I can move it so I can work on the cranks. If I want to work on the cassette, I can work on the cassette. Sure does make it easy when it's time to scrub a bicycle when you can get to all the pieces without having to get all contorted down on the ground. So as you see, it makes it pretty easy to work on a bicycle. And I would much rather work at chest level than down on the ground. We have an excellent work stand here. It's not going anywhere. So next time we're going to work on just your basic adjustments on a bicycle. We're not going to get into overhauls yet, but we are going to get into them eventually. But next time we're going to go through the basic adjustments, chain cleaning, making sure things are tight, a basic tune-up kind of thing. So until then, y'all keep up the good fight, and I'll see you next time.